Hi, and welcome to this webinar, Preparing for Law School. My name is Mollie Wagoner. I am a rising 2L. A little bit about myself. I am originally from the East Coast. I grew up in Southern Maryland, and I did my undergrad at American University. I then worked for about 5 years before coming to law school. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit of my process getting ready to go to law school, and also talk about some things that everyone can do to prepare for the application process. So the first thing you really want to think about when deciding to go to law school is really seriously thinking about is law school right for you? And in thinking about that, you want to kind of try to tap into why you want to go to law school. Now, it's perfectly okay to not know what kind of law you want to practice or maybe exactly what you want to do as a lawyer. In fact, I really recommend coming in with an open mind. For instance, when I was doing the application process, I really thought that I wanted to be a public defender and I wanted to go into criminal law. After my first year of law school, I really realized that criminal law was not for me. I didn't really want to do that through some different experiences that I had at the law school and taking crim law. But I found that I really, really deeply enjoyed tax law, which was something never in a million years did I think when I was applying to law school that I would be interested in. So it is good to keep an open mind. Like I said, you don't have to know exactly what you want to do, but think about why you want to go to law school, because it's a really big investment. It's 3 years and it's also a pretty big financial investment. So you want to make sure that you know why you're going and that it's a good choice for you. So how can you do that? I recommend talking to people that are currently in law school. If you have any friends that have already gone or family members, you can also talk to your pre-law advisor at your university. They'd be able to connect you with current students or alumni. You can also connect with lawyers through informational interviews. You know, in whatever city or town that you're in, reach out to folks that are working in the industry, or folks that maybe went to law school and decided not to use their law degree to become a lawyer, but are doing something else, because a lot of people go to law school, receive a JD, and end up not becoming attorneys. And then there's a lot of career paths that you can take that way. Another huge way to understand if law school is right for you is to visit schools. These can be informal visits if you have friends that go to schools, or you can reach out to the admissions office. They'll always be able to schedule a tour, let you talk to current students, maybe let you talk to a professor that you're particularly interested in. Or you can do more formal, preview days to kind of give you a taste of what that school is like, what classes are like, and show the different types of campus events they have. I also really recommend attending information sessions. A lot of those are taking place via Zoom right now, so it's a great opportunity to understand and visit what campuses are like, maybe if you aren't able to get there physically. So after doing some exploration of is law school right for you, and you've decided, yes, this is definitely what I want to do, you have to start tackling the application process. So there are some pretty big to-dos to do this, and I'm going to walk through each of them in these slides. First and foremost is the LSAT, then we've got the personal statement, asking for recommendations, putting together your law school resume, and vetting schools. So when it comes to the LSAT, it's probably what people think of the most when they are preparing to go to law school. I personally spent about a year studying for the LSAT, and I studied for it while I was working full-time. I know folks that studied for it their last year of undergrad, folks that took time off between undergrad and law school to just study full-time. There are a lot of different ways to study for the LSAT, and you have to figure out what's right for you with your schedule. Also, there's a lot of different methods of study. You can self-study, you can work in a group, you can go to a more regimented class, and it really just depends on what your learning style is. For me, I chose to go to a more formal prep class that was in person. I just really felt I needed that as someone that was working full-time. I wanted something structured that was at the same time every week with very regimented assignments, because I just liked that structure. Now, one thing I really want to point out is the Minnesota Pre-Law Scholars Program, which is a summer LSAT course that the U offers. It's open to rising seniors and recent grads, and you don't have to have gone to Minnesota undergrad to apply. It's open to folks from all institutions. So you can check that out on our website. Again, it's called the Minnesota Pre-Law Scholars Program. The biggest thing though in studying, no matter what your method of study, whether it be class, group, individual, is to take practice tests. I really think that that's the best way to prepare yourself. You can order old practice LSATs you can order the real LSATs, books of the tests off of Amazon. They're pretty affordable. Or you can usually find somewhere in your community that administers proctored practice tests. And I really recommend doing that because it's a great environment to practice. They're timed. It gives you a sense of what it's like to actually sit for the exam. The biggest thing though is to have a timeline that's realistic for you. Like I said, I spent about a year studying for the LSAT, and I actually took the LSAT 3 times. You know, I had originally planned to take it twice. When I had my second score, I really wasn't happy with it. I felt I could do better. So I decided to take the next exam. So I took the exams, the one at the end of the summer, the one in the fall, and the one right before the end of the year. And so I had my LSAT score back by the end of the year, and I used the time between Christmas and New Year's to kind of finalize all of my applications and send them in. And for me, that was a really good timeline based on what I do. But like I said, it took me about a year to study for it and do all of that. So, you know, some folks feel like they can study for it in 2 or 3 months. Some people want to devote more than that. But whatever it is, just kind of check in with yourself and set a timeline that you think works realistically with what else you have going on in your life. So after you take the test, you get to move on to some of the more fun aspects, in my opinion, such as the personal statement. So the personal statement is really important. You're going to use it for all of your applications. It's pretty much a free essay to say something about yourself that you really want the admissions team to know. Something unique, something that speaks to your experience and what you can really bring to the law school as a student. You know, the first thing is brainstorming topics. I kind of kept a journal the whole year I was studying for the LSAT. While I mainly focused on studying, I also tried to write down topics as they came to me. The biggest advice I have for picking a topic is just, it should be something authentic. Don't write about something just because you think it's significant or you think it's what the admissions teams wants to hear. They really just want to hear from you. They don't need you to have some big, profound experience if you haven't had that. Don't try to manufacture that if you haven't. Be authentic and talk about something that has really been a part of your life. My next biggest thing is to get a second opinion. So write it out, and then I recommend sharing a draft with someone you trust to give you feedback and critiques and say, you know, this is hitting the right note, this really isn't. Maybe think about going down this path, maybe think about thinking of a whole new topic, but someone that can give you that kind of honest feedback, because since this is an essay that most likely you'll work on for a really long time, it can be hard to kind of get to step away and gain perspective. But the biggest thing I want to say is to give yourself time. I wrote probably 12 different drafts of my personal statement while I was preparing my application. And my statement evolved immensely from that first draft to the end. It still had the core same experience, but the way I talked about it, the way I related it to why I wanted to go to law school and what it meant really changed with each drafting. So the longer you give yourself to write the essay and really work with the draft and rework it and set it aside for a few weeks and come back to it, the better you're going to be able to make it. Don't leave your personal statement to the end because it's really not something that should be rushed. It is one of the strongest pieces of your application because it's your opportunity to talk directly to the admissions folks. So I really want to emphasize, just take as much time with it as you can. So after that, one of the next most important things is letters of recommendation. You really want to be strategic with who you ask. You know, these should be folks that know you well, not just in passing, but have really worked with you and can speak to your capabilities as a student. You know, for me, I had been out of school for 5 years. So for my letters, I had one professor who I worked very closely with in undergrad, but I had also maintained a relationship with after I graduated. You know, I kept in touch with him. We would meet for coffee, talk about my career. He also mentored me. So he was a natural choice for me to pick for my letter of recommendation. But the other letter, I chose my boss that I had at the company I'd been working for 5 years, because she could really speak to what I was like now, what I was like as an employee, what kind of characteristics I had as a worker. So those two letters were the letters that I chose. Again, you want to choose someone that can really speak to your abilities as a student. So maybe someone that you TA'd for, or someone that or a professor that you went to office hours a lot with and really had a relationship. They knew who you were. They knew what your work was like. They maybe offered feedback on a thesis or some other kind of paper. So when it comes to asking for the letter, there is some kind of etiquettes that you want to observe. You really want to make sure that you give them enough time to write the letter. So don't ask them for it on a super quick turnaround, because chances are they have other folks asking them for letters as well. And if it's a well-written letter of recommendation, it will take them time to write. So the more time that you give them to write it, most likely the better it's going to be. Also, when you reach out to them about your letter, you may want to outline the things they're hoping to speak to. Obviously, they will write the letter that they're going to write. But when I reached out to my recommenders, I said, you know, hey, I'm applying for law school. I would really love if you would consider writing a letter of recommendation on my behalf. I was specifically hoping that you could speak to some of these things. And I kind of bulleted out the things that I had worked with them on during my time in undergrad, you know, because 5 years is a long time. I had already graduated 5 years ago. They may not remember every single thing I did. So bulleting out and kind of reminding them, you know, we worked on my thesis together, like these are the different things that we did, is a great way to just kind of lay out those things for them. So when they go to write their letter, they're not trying to remember everything specifically about your story. You should also send them a copy of your resume, just to kind of help them ground your experience. And lastly, just make sure your LSAC account is set up, because they will have to send the letter directly through LSAC. And you just want to be able to walk them through that process when they agree to write your letter. Next, I just briefly want to touch on your law school resume. This is slightly different than a standard resume, mainly because you really want to include everything on it. So academic achievements and honors, extracurriculars, and work experience. You know, if you wrote a thesis, put your thesis on there and what your thesis topic was, put your GPA on there. If you did honors college, if you graduated magna cum laude, if you were in Phi Beta Kappa, you just want to make sure you have all of those accolades on your resume, as well as if you were the president of any clubs or involved in any on-campus activities, and work experience. You know, this can be formal work experience. Maybe you graduated, you've been graduated, you have some very formal work experience. It could be internships, it could be volunteer experience. It could be working at Starbucks, whatever your experience is, make sure that it's reflected on your resume. But again, that's a little bit of a double-edged sword. You know, you don't want to put things on there just to take up space. So kind of have a fine eye when you're editing, and don't just throw the kitchen sink on there, but make sure everything you're putting on there really says something and speaks to what you did in undergrad or your time since graduation. So next, I think, is the most exciting part, and that's vetting schools. So deciding where you want to go and where you're going to spend the next 3 years of law school, which is a huge decision. I think the first thing to do when you're looking at making this big decision is try to determine your target locations. You know, do you want to be on the coast? Do you want to be on the Midwest? Do you want to be in a big city? Do you want to be in a college town? Just kind of some basic filter questions like that. In my experience, I applied broadly. I applied all across the US. I wasn't tied to one geographic location. I knew I wanted to be in a big city. That was pretty much the only kind of filter that I had. So, you know, that worked for me, and I liked having the different options. Another thing you really want to think about is what kind of atmosphere do you thrive in? Are you hyper competitive? Do you want something smaller? Do you want a really large, do you like the large class? Do you want to be closely integrated with the undergraduate school? Do you want it to be somewhat separate from that? These are questions that you should kind of start getting a feel for as you're looking at schools. I also really recommend looking at the professors in the course catalog, especially some of the upper level courses and seminars. Does the school have any type of certificate programs or concentrations, and are those areas that you are interested in? I wouldn't make your decisions solely by that, because again, as I said, you may change your mind when you come to law school about what kind of law you're pursuing. So you want to make sure that if you do change your mind, that overall the program is strong in several areas and not just one. You should also really look at the clinic offerings and journals, because most likely that's something that you'll want to take part of during your law school experience, especially clinic. It's so valuable to get that real world experience. So see, you know, how broad are the clinics? How many do they have? How many of their students participate in clinics? And same with journals. Do they have more than one journal? What's the policy for journal? Is it grade on? Is it petition? So these different things are factors that you may not be thinking about now, but once you're in law school, those become really important decisions as you're moving through your 1L, 2L, and 3L year. You know, and see what clubs and extracurriculars are listed. And are those things that you would want to be involved in? I mean, for me, it was really important that whatever school I went to had an active outlaw chapter, because I knew that was something that I wanted to be interested in, involved in. So if there's a particular affinity organization that's important to you, see if they have a chapter, or if they don't, see what their policy is about starting a chapter. So again, those are kind of things that you want to be thinking about when you're looking into schools. And most importantly, I would say, is talking to current students. You can reach out to your admissions, to the admissions office, and they can always connect you with current students, either that have similar interests to you or similar backgrounds, and they can share what it was like for them deciding to come to that school and how they like it now. And I don't think that there's any substitute for talking to current students, because I really think that's the best way to understand what the school is like and what it's like for students. So that is pretty much my overview of preparing for law school. If you have any other questions, you can always contact JD Admissions at jdadmissions@umn.edu, or you can feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'd be happy to talk more about my experience preparing to come to law school. My email is wagon027@umn.edu, and I wish you the best of luck on your law school application journey.